sets of projects I'll show you from this group. Survival in Copa Veda depends on water. Drinking, washing, bathing, cleaning, and cooking all require regular trips to one of several pump sites scattered throughout the village. The Nagarpalika, which is the municipal government, spends very little money on infrastructure in Kondogaon, so wells typically they look like this. It's just a simple pump coming out of the ground. The pool, in turn, becomes a breeding ground for malaria. This area has one of the highest incidence of malaria in central India, and other diseases, or very high incidence of malaria. It's a particular problem here, due to accumulated debris from washing and bathing and the presence of watering animals. The work of collecting water is performed almost entirely by the women and children of the village, who travel back and forth to these pump sites up to a dozen times a day. In addition to the backbreaking labor of transporting the water, the women suffer from musculoskeletal disorders as a result of the awkward torsion involved in lifting heavy vessels onto their shoulders and heads. Labor reflects one of the central features of village life, a patriarchal structure in which women are closely monitored by fathers, husbands, uncles, and brothers. Their movement through the village, their social interactions, and their daily work are subject to a pervasive scopic regime. Over the course of several months, Althoff and her collaborators analyzed the spatial choreography of village life, the protocols governing the movement and aggregation of bodies, and the distribution of power, labor, and access among men, women, and children. The water pump quickly emerged as a central nexus of meaning in village life, essential to daily survival while remaining almost entirely inexpressive at the symbolic level, due in part to its association with women's labor. In the year 2000, they began to develop plans for restructuring the pump sites by organizing a series of extended meetings with Adivasi and non-Adivasi from the vicinity of Kondogaon. The ensuing discussions were wide-ranging, addressing the role of art in the villages, the selection of specific sites, the politics of water supply and land access, a lot of the land's being bought up now by wealthy Hindus, and caste issues associated with Hindu perceptions that the Adivasi are unclean. The final pump site designs were generated collaboratively by Althoff, Rajkumar, Gisarum, and Shantibai in response to the issues introduced at these meetings. After extensive negotiations with village elders and the municipal government, they built the first water pump structure, or nalpar, in 2001. As of 2007, they've constructed 3 nalpar sites in Copa Veda and another 4 elsewhere in Kondogaon, and this will give you an example. This is actually a relatively nice municipal water pump, but because it doesn't just have a spigot coming out of the ground, but you can see the approximate age of the girls that do the water collection, and then they might have to walk half a mile or a mile with those on their head several times a day, and they get back problems, as you can see, because of the lifting this 30 some odd pounds of water onto their head. The format of each site is similar: a smooth concrete pad that is large enough to accommodate several women at once, a more efficient pump design, and an enclosure incorporating Adivasi cultural symbols related to water, the zigzag or the chevron, or formal references to pumps, faucets, and clay pots made by village artisans, and a system of paved trenches to channel and collect runoff water into smaller reservoirs for irrigation and building and watering of animals. The construction and that's one of the runoff pools. The construction and design of the nalpar sites was undertaken collaboratively with a particular focus on, oh, let me show you this first. I got my slides mixed up. This is the inside of one of the sites, and you can see the amount of room that's available. And then they're going to demonstrate what they're doing at the pump site. One of the features is that was really important was this little, I wonder if that'll work, this little guy right here, which is designed to allow them to rest the vessels as they carry them up to their heads. And I asked her to show me how did you used to have to do it, so she's showing me how did you used to have to lift the vessels. She says, it's like this. They're like, why are you asking us these stupid questions? So there she is. And now they rested on the ledge. And here's an example of some of the formal motifs of pots and some of the other ones. Okay, workshops to combine Adivasi and non-Adivasi, here we go, artisans, so that the creation itself became both ritualized as a public event and socially transformative. The concrete pad allows for the efficient evaporation of water while also providing a platform for social interaction among the women encouraging a convivial interruption of work routines. The nalpar acts as a stage for women's labor, setting off and framing the act of washing, cleaning, and water collection, and marking the pump as a site of significant center of activity in the village. The sites also operate on a more practical ergonomic level, incorporating niches and platforms that allow the women to rest the vessels before they carry them to their heads. The surrounding enclosure is perhaps the most distinctive formal element in the nalpar. Some are shaped like large pots or pop art faucets, like this one, while others are more abstract. My concern here is less with the enclosure's decorative or symbolic function than with its effect on the phenomenological condition of the nalpar site. The scale and structure of the enclosure is significant. It must be high enough to provide some degree of privacy, and it must be partially closed off while still allowing ease of access for women burdened with heavy vessels or laundry. The nalpar is both a physical object and a gesture and enunciation within the space of the village. To enclose is to claim or possess, but also to shelter, to segregate, but also to protect. The nalpar is simultaneously integral to village life. Literally, it is the source of water from which sustains life, while also set apart from it, both connected and uncoupled. The nalpar produces two distinct but related effects. First, it claims this space, a space largely already assigned to women by virtue of the gender division of labor, as a site of dialogue and recreation as well as work among women. This appropriative act is essential to its effect. While men aren't prevented from entering the nalpar enclosures and they still drink at the sites, its very separateness as a space of women's work discourages their extended presence. And in fact, one of the objections that the men in the village made when these designs were first introduced was that they could no longer watch the women attempting to bathe. The physical barrier of the nalpar wall excludes the men and effectively screens the women from their view. At the same time, the enclosure creates within itself a new space in which the women can share work and build a sense of solidarity apart from the normal cultural relations and spatial protocols of village life, a zone of cohesion, intimacy, and reconsolidation. Through its very monumentality, it declares this space, this labor, these relationships as having a symbolic as well as a practical value. Over a period of almost 7 years, the nalpar sites have effected a subtle but significant remapping of the psychogeography of village life in Copa Veda. They have provided for perhaps the first time a protected space of interaction and reflection for women available in the course of their daily routines. There are few, if any, sites of this nature in the village. In the temple, the home, the festival, and the marketplace, men and women tend to interact within traditional hierarchical structures. And I have some other images of this one. You can kind of see the effect of it in terms of closing off this space. In many ways, the nalpar sites are quite simple, operating at the most practical physical level to facilitate the postures and rhythms of human labor, water collection, washing, and drinking. At the same time, the ways in which these sites function within the broader social ecology of the village raise significant questions about the calibration of collective and individual identity. They constitute, in the totality of their physical, aesthetic, and social operation, a form of embodied practice with implications that extend beyond the boundaries of Bastar. In particular, they complicate some of the more reductive assumptions found in recent art theory and criticism regarding the function of individual and collective identity. Something very like a theoretical canon in its influence and uniformity has emerged in Euro-American art writing over the past decade and a half, influenced by the rapprochement between post-conceptual art practice and post-structuralist literary theory during the 1990s. This discourse typically operates through a juxtapositional logic in which a good form of subjectivity, defined as fluid, open, shifting, and incapable of violence, is contrasted with an antithetical form of bad subjectivity, defined as fixed, closed, coherent, and violently instrumentalizing. Thus, identity is treated as either static or fluid, coherent or incoherent, stable or destabilized, porous or impermeable, singular or collective. In each case, ethical privilege is assigned to only one of two fixed positions: an entirely benign, ceaselessly changing, pre-subjective desire on the one hand, and a violently and objectifying drive on the other. The only disruption and fragmentation are seen as epistemologically productive. The nalpar sites offer another lesson. Identity is always carried forward through a double movement. a diachronic oscillation between the assertion and dissolution of self. A moment of enframing and connotative assertion is necessary and generative, both epistemologically and ethically, in the reparative construction of identity. The space of the nalpar is not heterotopic or fluid, but exclusive and concentric. Its efficacy resides precisely in the claiming of space and the power to limit access via social norms to women in a context in which that power is systematically denied elsewhere. In fact, as the nalpar suggests, the concept of a heterotopic space in which the hierarchies of daily life are suspended in a fluid play of difference is just as clearly ideological as its Habermasian opposite, the ideal speech community, so long as neither acknowledges the a priori determinants and constraints of identity in a given circumstance. One of the most significant questions raised by collaborative art practice concerns the pragmatic interrelationship between solidarity, violence, and resistance. The nalpar sites certainly express the drive to enframe and annex space. They effectively erode the zone of observation that is projected onto and through the village by men, who gain a sense of self precisely through the exercise of this scopic and spatial control. To the extent that this action was perceived by the men of the village as curtailing their agency and freedom of observation, which it did, it involved a form of violence, a diminishing of the sphere of the other. But this violence is clearly of a different order than the violence involved in attempting to possess, objectify, or negate another subject. It is a drive that is directed at limiting another subject's power over oneself, a labor that seeks to sustain the integrity of the self relative to others rather than establishing one's dominion over them. The solidarity or togetherness produced in the nalpar doesn't claim transcendence or universality, but neither does it dissolve into constant flux or fetishize monadic isolation. As Dialogue's work suggests, the community of Copa Veda is defined by a series of strategic exclusions oriented around gender and imposed through the framing of space and movement via habit and convention. There is no attempt here to romanticize village life, but rather a frank acknowledgement of its biases and limitations. At the same time, there is a willingness to see the emplotment of space and movement as fluid rather than timeless, and to rewrite the script that governs the gathering and segregation of bodies in the village. While Dialogue seeks to intervene in these protocols to generate an alternative schema, it does so through reciprocal engagement with the residents of the village, in particular the women, but also the male elders. In contrast to the programmatic imposition of a priori technologies and techniques typical of development agencies, Dialogue's innovations were generated in and through the experience of the site. The nalpar site soon attracted groups of children as well as women collecting water. Children in Copa Veda have few places to play. Adivasi culture has traditionally recognized the necessary, and now I'm going to talk about the second set of projects that are related. Adivasi culture has traditionally recognized the necessary autonomy of children from adult life through the institution of the Go Tool, which is what you're looking at here, although it's in disrepair. A kind of dormitory clubhouse in which unmarried adolescents teach younger children songs, dances, poems, wood carving, and other art forms. The Go Tool also encourages the young men and women of the village to form romantic relationships, which are understood as temporary and provisional. It is assumed and even required that they will change partners regularly, prior to formal marriage and monogamous commitment. The Hindu government, however, has repressed the Go Tool system, which it considers immoral because it allows boys and girls to interact and even have sex without adult supervision. For the next series of works, Dialogue chose to reinvent the tradition of the Go Tool, creating a space where the village children could congregate, play, and educate one another outside the formal schooling of the temple or the classroom. And this is this is important because the municipal government will, by and large, only support the construction of temples, Hindu temples, and it's difficult to get them to support Adivasi architecture for Adivasi cultural purposes. They describe this new space as a Pila Gudi, or children's temple. The first Pila Gudi was designed by Raj Kumar in 2001 for the nearby village of Kuzma. Raj Kumar's Pila Gudi, and here's Raj Kumar. was designed by, was based on the famous Adivasi Mother Goddess temple at Matnar, which is about 150 kilometers away. The interior ceiling of the Matnar temple, which I think I might have, I'll go to that in a second. This is, you can see the kind of triangular or chevron forms here again. Where did I go? The interior ceiling of the Matnar temple features a series of carved deities who gaze down upon the worshippers below. For his Pila Gudi, Rajkumar replaced the sculptures of deities with large mirrors laid flat against a ceiling surface. When the children look up, they see their own images reflected back. The performative submission implied in the act of gazing upward to the temple ceiling is transformed. An external metaphysical authority is replaced by a reflective self, imaging in which agency and divinity are attributed to the children themselves. And this is the Matnar temple, and here are the deities. This secularizing gesture takes on added significance given the growing pressure exerted by Hindu fundamentalism in rural India. The members of the dialogue also developed art workshops for the children in the Pila Gudi that employed the mirrored ceiling, its reflections and distortions, as a way to initiate discussions about image and self in the village community. The second Pila Gudi was designed, well, it's actually the third, but anyway, I'm only going to show you two. Another Pila Gudi was designed collaboratively by Altaf, Rajkumar, and Shantibai, along with the children of Kopaveda. It's located near a small cluster of living spaces and workshops built by Dialogue at the edge of the village. The children wanted a space that could function simultaneously as a meeting place and a playground, so their early sketches, and this is one by a child named Somnath, so their early sketches describe a building with a low-pitched roof connected to the ground by a series of smooth, flat buttresses. The completed structure follows this design quite closely and allows the children to literally play on the roof of the building, again inverting traditional architectural syntax in which roof as shelter becomes roof as playground or ceiling as heaven becomes ceiling as mirror. The children also ask that the Pila Gudi be located at the periphery of the dialogue compound. Here it is. This is the other side of it that you can't see in those other pictures. At the periphery of the compound so that it faced away from the other buildings to create a space protected from adult scrutiny. As both the nalpar sites and the Pila Gudi suggest, visuality plays a crucial role in dialogue's work. Relationships of seeing and being seen, observation and reflection are worked out in both the architectural form and the social operation of each of these projects. Like the nalpar sites, the Pila Gudi provides a space of enclosure and situational autonomy that encourages new modes of interaction and conviviality. The 12th seat, oh, I didn't tell you about that one. The mirrored ceiling and the roof as playground literalize the child's agency, their capacity to remake and reinvent the world, to act rather than being acted upon. And these are some of their, I'll just quickly show you some of the things they do in the Pila Gudi. They make little water pumps, because the water pumps are really important, so they make little paper mache sculptures of them. Frogs. And that's like a little, you blow into that, basically, and it goes around, and it's beautiful. Okay. All right.